What we will be discussing is the paradox between the need for speed and
Yep.
human error. And what I mean by that is, in a world that is getting faster and scarier, and all these bright flashing lights are they all look nice, but the need for speed is just getting faster and faster. But that we're only human at the end of the day, and errors occur. So that's where the rationale came from. But before we get into it, John, are you okay just to let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, Nick. Thanks very much for having me on. So my name's John Scott. I currently work for a startup called CultureAI. We've built a human risk management platform. So that's looking at human behaviors and trying to help people when they do make errors. How do we help them fix it? Previous to that, I've worked at BT in the security space and the Bank of England around their security awareness program for about 7 years. And prior to that, all of my work is, or all of my professional work is, has been training of one sort or another. So very much aware of the difficulties that people face, especially, with computers or with new systems, new software, and how unflexible or inflexible those systems might be. And so how do we help people adapt, and how do we help them understand what they need to do?
Okay, so very much where we're at to modern day then. So in terms of Culture AI then, I'm right in thinking, is it a human risk management platform? Is
That's
that
right,
right?
yeah.
So why, first question, why is there the need for a human risk management platform? Talk to me about the need for it.
Sure. So I've been working in training for 35 years, and security training specifically for the last 9, nearly 10. Um, and one of the problems that we have, so that I think there's distinct stages of organizations. There are some organizations which have no kind of security training for their general staff, maybe some for the developers, maybe some for people in high risk roles, but quite a lot of organizations still, especially smaller organizations, have very little security training for their staff. Those that do, um, a lot of it is what I would call compliance based. So it is almost the, Nick, have you done your training this year? Yes, tick, right, okay, everyone has taken training. But I know from my background in education and training, that doesn't actually change behaviors. It might give you knowledge, it might give you an understanding of what are things we care about as an organization, but it doesn't actually change behaviors. And what actually changes behaviors is coaching and interventions. So if you think about, you're driving in your car, if there was a light flashing and a beep sounding all of the time, you just start tuning it out, right? That
Mm.
can't be important because it's on all of the time. If, however, you get a warning light flash saying, your tire pressures have gone, or your engine is about to stop, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you're much more likely to pay attention to that because it's unusual, and you know that you should do something about things which are unusual. So a human risk management platform is basically that. It is looking at your behaviors
Yeah.
within your organization, and we look across, I think, about 40 different behaviors, and it is flagging to you and to your organization when there is increased risk, and especially, and most importantly, increased risk that we can do something about. So a particular example, a client of ours, somebody in their organization copied an Excel spreadsheet into a Google Drive. Okay, they were allowed to do that. It was a legitimate thing for them to do, but our system flagged two areas of concern. Number one, by analysing the file, we could tell that that had a significant amount of personal information in it. And all this analysis is automatic. It's not like I'm going there and looking through. But so we flag there's a lot of like thousands of rows of personal data in this file. Secondly, we can tell that the file is open, the Google Drive folder is open to the world.
Hmm.
And the two of those things in combination say high risk. This
Yeah.
is a lot of personal information, and it's open to the world. So we flag it to the organization. We say, hey, do you want, you should do something. You should at least look at this and review it. We think this is high risk. And because it was, quite unusual, we said, if you can share with us why that has happened, we'd love it. And they said, okay, we'll talk to you in a couple of months. Okay, calendar, let's then set a calendar date. So we went back to them and said, obviously we're not looking at the file. We don't know what's in there, but we would love to know the story if there's one. And they said, yeah, that was redundancy information that was going to impact a number of our staff.
Yeah.
And we didn't realize that the folder was open to the world. So they were able to shut that down,
Hmm.
absolutely minimize the risk of that data getting out until it was dealt with in the proper way. And it was because we were able to flag and say, hey, there are two things here that when you put them together, we think this is something you need to look at. So just like the warning lights on your car, it's not necessarily you've got a problem, but it is saying, hey, here's somewhere you might want to start looking.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So with that being said, then, is the tool? I'm just trying to think. Is the tool more of a preventative measure? Is it not coming in at too late too late of the timeline, because you're kind of waiting for someone to go wrong, for someone to do something wrong before it gets flagged? um is there ways in which you can kind of beat it to it? Obviously it comes from the education side, or is that what we've tried before and it's just not proved reliable, and therefore we need to cut it out at the next stage?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
So, as much as I would love to be Tom Cruise, we don't do Minority Report style pre-crime. This is getting there. One of the things we're always looking at new behaviours, so we're always looking at what are the interventions that we could do that we
Yeah.
can identify. So there are some things, for example, with generative AI. At the moment, we can flag if you're posting data into generative AI.
Mm.
And again, that's a potential risk. One of the things we're looking at is, can we see if you're pasting it in? So
Okay.
before you hit submit, actually, the trigger is I've pasted it in rather than I've clicked submit. So that's something we're investigating. I'm not sure. I'm not saying we're quite there yet.
Yep.
So there are ways of getting it as close to and even slightly before the instant as possible.
Okay.
But the other side of that is, if you think about a typical organization's security operations center, they may not be able to do something about, a system which flags. It might take them potentially days, possibly even weeks
Mm.
to try and fix something. And we know that when you look at indicators of compromise for an organization, quite often they'll say, oh, the bad guys were in there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, sometimes months
Yep.
looking around, you know. So what we're saying is, well, if we can get it as close to the incident as possible,
Yep.
then what we're doing is we're absolutely minimizing the risk. We're not we can't take it away, but we are minimizing it. And more importantly, we're cutting down what's called the mean time to resolve
Okay.
significantly, because instead of raising a ticket and it goes to service desk and somebody investigates it and you do boom, 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 and even that, really quick organization, that could be hours. We
Yep.
could literally say to you, Nick, this is risky, and you go, yes, it is, fix that.
Yeah.
And now we've still got it logged. We can log it as an incident, but you, as the person closest to it, are the one who could remediate it most quickly.
Okay.
And then the other part of that, and again, this touches on the training point. If I'm asking you to change your behaviors as an individual, then you need to know what behaviors we want to change. So if we use phishing as an example, everybody knows don't click on suspicious links, blah, 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 all that standard stuff. But if I've trained you 3, 6, 9 months ago,
Mm.
and you're a busy guy, you've got your day job to do, you've got all of these other things that you're responsible for, are you likely to remember, oh, that training that was kind of generic and everybody took, and I just went next, 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 next on
Yeah.
it? Whereas if we've popped something up and said, hey, we think you've just done something risky, you're much more likely to be receptive to learning in that moment. So we would say we differentiate very strongly between training and coaching.
Yeah.
Training is the thing that everybody gets. And, as I say, there are some uses to that.
Yeah.
But coaching is like if you play golf, or if you're a swimmer or a cyclist or whatever, you have a coach who is looking at your behaviors and saying, this is what you need to do more of, and this is what you need to change.
Mm.
And because it's individualized, it's personalized, you can tie it very clearly to something you have done. And it
Mm.
can be positive as well. You can emphasize people's positive behaviors and say, do more of that.
Okay.
But what you're getting is a very clear, I did a thing, I've had some feedback on it.
Yep.
And that coaching is way more powerful because to you, it makes sense. You go, well, yes, I did do it, and I did it 2 minutes ago. So it's
Yep.
very clear in my memory. Oh, yeah, I see. And now you've told me what the risks are. Okay. So
Yep.
it's not perfect. Not going to say that everybody changes their behavior because of it. But some of the stats I've seen about your sort of generic training is, you're lucky if 10, maybe 15% of people change their behaviors because of training that they took once a year for about 35 minutes. What
Yep.
we're trying to do is say, here individually for you is a thing that you can do to make the organization safer or to make yourself safer, to reduce risk. Do you want to do it? And it gives you
Yeah.
that option.
Nice. So I'm just trying to get my head around like, so do you guys use generative AI? Because I'm thinking like the balance between psychology, culture, cybersecurity, it's a very sophisticated method of being a human risk management platform, this.
Yeah.
So, and something that I just don't think that AI would have the capability to do, famous last words. So
Yeah.
do you use generative AI or not?
So weirdly, given the name of the organization is CultureAI, we don't really use very much AI at all.
Hmm.
And there's a very simple reason for that. Our CEO, James, he's an ex-pen tester. And about 10 years ago, he said, look, I've never failed at a pen test. And it's not because I'm brilliant. I mean, obviously, he's very good. He said, it's not because I'm brilliant. It's because I've always been able to get in through the humans. So he went off and started a phishing simulation company about 10, 11 years ago. Then, very clearly said, well, phishing's one behavior and it might be the main attack factor, but it's not the only one. And it's certainly, when we see human error, especially, phishing is very much not the only thing. So he then started Culture AI, and his initial thoughts were, hey, let's make it completely AI driven. So it responds to you, and this is long before the LLMs really came onto the scene about 2 years ago. And what he found was clients said, no, we want accountability.
Hmm.
We want to be able, we don't want to just click a button and it starts running a what we would have called a security awareness program back then. What we actually want is we want to be able to intervene, we want to be able to tweak it and so on.
Yeah.
So we do have some elements of machine learning in our phishing, for example. So if you continually get what we would call a high susceptibility fish, if you're spotting all of those, we'll slow down the rate at which we send them to you, but we'll up the difficulty. If you're falling for fishes a
Yeah.
lot, well, we'll increase the frequency of them, but we'll make them easier to spot. And
Okay.
that's all done using machine learning to give you that individualized coaching. If you need, to use a horrible expression, if you need stabilizers on your bike, so we'll make it a lot easier, then we'll put the stabilizers on. If
Hmm.
they're getting in your way, we'll take them off.
Right.
But certainly, we are constantly looking at things like Gen AI. There's some really interesting behavioral stuff that I've seen in terms of mapping normal versus mapping abnormal behaviors,
Yeah.
and helping you to set a baseline automatically, so you can say this. Some of the stuff I've seen is very technical. This server normally only sends data out for 5 minutes every hour. It's now sending out every minute. Do you want to do something about it? We're kind of looking at, could we apply that to the to human behavior, but at the moment our main focus is on, we can spot behaviors we can see if you share public information personal information in a public Teams chat.
Yeah.
So if that's something the organization doesn't want you to do, they can switch on that says, hey, we've just seen this happen, we need you to do something about it, or we'd like you to do something about it.
Hmm.
So it's a not yet
Yeah.
answer,
Yeah.
if I did it really short.
No, no, absolutely. Um, so why is human risk a thing? Why do we make mistakes in the workplace? Is it all individual? Do you even have the answer for it? Why do we in 2024 keep making mistakes in a product that's been around for X amount of years?
Because we've been human beings for 10,000 years. There's some fascinating work, and in fact, health and safety are way ahead of security in this. Um, but there's been fascinating work over the last 20, 30 years looking at behavioral economics. Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, says we have two systems in our brain. System one, fast, heuristic based, so rule based. I always turn left here. I'm going to turn left here again. It's the system that will get you home and you suddenly realize I've been driving for 20 minutes. I don't quite know where I am, because
Yeah.
you're just in that, you don't have to make any conscious decisions, even though you're still paying attention.
Yeah.
And that's cognitively fast. You've got all of these rules built up. System 2 is that slow, I need to work out from first principles, I need to spend a lot of energy working this out. And what Kahneman said is most people sit in system 1 95% of the time. Those heuristic rules are cognitive biases.
Yeah.
So, and again, a silly example, but if you always pick the second cheapest bottle of wine on the restaurant's list because you go, well, I won't have the cheapest, but I don't know much about wine, so I'll go for the second cheapest one. That's predictable behavior. A
Yeah.
lot of people use that pattern. So if you're a restaurant trying to sell your bottle of wine that you really nobody likes, you put it on at the second cheapest one and you will sell more of it. Because the people who are following that rule don't necessarily know very much about wine.
Yeah.
So there's those two things. We've got system 1, system 2 thinking, and system 1 lead us into cognitive biases. Those are exploitable. So if I know as a cyber criminal that most people respond to authority prompts, or most people respond to scarcity prompts. So if I'm short of time, I need you to do something quickly. You are less likely to think about it. You are less likely to consider it. Not always, and not everyone. That's why no phishing email works 100%. But these are well-known biases. And the health and safety field has been looking at human error since there was a health and safety field. But there's a guy called James Reason who did some fascinating, we're still doing some fascinating work, but he started in the 80s and 90s. And he said, well, actually, we have roughly 4 sorts of error. There's what he calls slips, lapses, and mistakes. So a slip is a perceptual error. Usually, I didn't see it. So you see google.com and you click on it and you don't realize that one of the O's is a 0. Yeah, it's discernible, but maybe not. A lapse is when you just forgot to do something. That email systems now say, hey, you've written the words, please see attached, and you haven't attached anything.
Yes.
Would you like to do something about that? That's a lapse defense because you did mean to attach something and then you got distracted, the doorbell rang, whatever it was, and then you clicked send and the person says, hey, you didn't actually send me anything. So you can build those in. And then mistakes are lack of knowledge. And that's where training does have a part, because with the best training in the world, I can't train you out of slips and lapses. I can train you to pay more attention, but there will always be something. And then the fourth one is deliberate action. When you say, no, I absolutely meant to do that. This is the safest way I can do this, or this is the securest way I can do this. And maybe you're not right. So that's where we've got a lot to learn. And what things like prompts do is they can help with slips and lapses. Because if you didn't see something, I got phished about 2 years ago. It's coming on to getting off one tube train, going on to another. And of course, you get just enough signal that all your emails start coming and going ping, 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 and you're not really paying attention. And there was a Netflix 3-month offer.
Okay.
Right? And I went, I'm a Netflix customer. Okay, let's have a look. And they'd used the phishers had used a bit.ly link shortener.
Okay.
To obfuscate, so I couldn't tell it wasn't going to Netflix.
Yeah.
And bit.ly themselves put in an intervening page which said, hey, a lot of people have reported this as a suspicious link.
Yeah.
There's a bit more information for you. We're not going to stop you going ahead, but we're just going to give you that information. And of course, that was enough for me to go, oh, hold on. I wasn't paying attention there. And again, that's a defense against a slip, because I wasn't looking. It just
you out of autopilot, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It just got you out, yeah. Okay.
And I think a lot of why this is really important is a lot of what the cyber criminals are trying to do is keep us on autopilot because we're predictable. And a lot of prompts, a lot of warning lights, flashes, all of those, alarm bells are getting us out of that, as you say, getting us out of autopilot and getting us to think, hold on, something is wrong here. I need to pay attention. And that's mostly what we're trying to do with people. We're trying to say, not have the lights flashing all the time, but just say, hey, this thing here, this situation now, you need to pay a bit more attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And it links really nicely to when you were saying sort of You do when you're scrolling on your phone, whatever it might be. All accounts now are linked between Messenger and Instagram, and then you think in the workplace, like your Outlook, it's linked to Teams. Everything's like linked now. It's speed, it's fast. How can we do this quicker for you? And like you say, if they make it look as if it's all streamlined and that, you're just naturally going to be in that frame of mind. Now, is there ever a time where us being in this frame of mind, um, it can be used to the advantage in security? Or are we
Absolutely.
actually a benefit to moving this fast?
Yeah. So the absolute reason, the whole system one, system two, system one is really useful because it is fast. And
Yep.
it is the benefit of experience. You've done something 100 times. You don't have to think about it. So when you get something like an instant response, if you see somebody who really knows what they're doing, I had the pleasure of working with a really excellent IT guy when I was at the Bank of England, guy called Colin Dawson. And even though he was very senior, he'd worked there so long that when an instant went off, he said, "Have you checked this? Have you checked this? Have you checked this? Have you checked this?" And he shortcutted a process to say, "Given what I can see," and literally
Yes.
walked him through and said, "Given what I can see, here are the four places I would check first."
Okay.
Right? And that's system one. He didn't have to think about it.
Yep.
He'd prioritized as he was listening, and then was able to give and I think it was the second or the third one was exactly where the problem was.
Yep.
Um, you see it with anyone who works in a really stressful job. Anyone in the army, the police, firefighters. They train and train and train and train and train to get those responses in, so that
Hmm.
the firefighter going in, two fighters going into a room will automatically start a search pattern that takes
Yep.
account of the other person. These are all the benefit of training. Um, I think in security, what we need is human judgment a lot of the time. The reason that we ask you to do something is because we can't tell automatically. You know, I always say if a phishing email's got into your inbox, it's beaten all of our technical defenses.
Okay.
That's and you sometimes hear people say human's the weakest link. And it's like, well, if computers were perfect, the phishing email wouldn't be there in the first place.
Yep.
So it's a chain of things, and in fact, James Reason talks about what he calls the Swiss cheese model.
Okay.
And he
What's that?
says, if you imagine slices of cheese that have got holes in them, if
Yep.
you line up four or five of them, you probably won't have a way through. You'll get a what layered defense, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense? So you
Yeah. Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
because the holes are basically random. So
Yeah.
when you talk about security, human beings form a really important layer of that defense because we can do the judgment, we can do the quick action, we can be very, very flexible, and we can think outside the box, which a process or a computer or a system may not be able to. So
Yep.
actually, there's still a massive place for us
Yep.
to play within the security field because we have that flexibility and that intelligence and that ability to say, let's try this.
Yeah. And will how's it been received so far then? How's CultureAI's product been received in the sense of does it because you can sometimes see like, okay, well, why are we bringing in this and I'm being purposely naive here. Why are we bringing in this silver bullet, this tooling that has nothing to do? It's not human. So why is it going to fix a human problem? How has it affected the culture of organizations? Has it been welcomed with open arms, saying, "Look, we need this tool," or "No, the computer doesn't understand what we go through
Yeah.
emotionally on a day to day. I've got problems at home financially. My kid kept me up all night." How's it been received?
So I think that's a really, really key question. So first thing is, it is just a tool. It's not a
Yep.
silver bullet. It doesn't fix everything. And there's no way we would want it to be because we would much rather be specialist in the sort of human behavior area. The second thing I would say, though, is in the places where we've seen it implemented really well, there's no moral function to it. And
Okay.
by that, I mean, hey, Nick, this looks risky. We're not saying you're a bad person for doing something risky. Sometimes risk is really important, but we're just flagging that there's increased risk here. And if I again use a slightly different metaphor, if you're driving your car and it's flat, open ground, and it's a lovely sunny day, and you can go at 70, 80 miles an hour perfectly safely, nothing, your car shouldn't be warning you about anything. But if
Mhm.
you're going on, it's a wet, windy night, and you're driving up through the hills and the road is winding, a the feedback from your car will be telling you you need to slow down. You screech around the first corner and you think, oh, maybe I did. I'm glad my tires got that one. And you see warning signs, and you see barriers where it's really bad. That's what we're doing. We're not saying don't drive your car.
Yep.
We're saying in a circumstance where the the risk of the situation has increased,
Mm.
maybe slow down or maybe pay a bit more attention. And when it's been implemented that way, when people don't use it as a punishment tool effectively, then that tends to be received very well. Because if you get someone who is, doing mostly all doing the right things, they never hear from us because
Yep.
we're not banging on at them basically. But if they need a bit more support, then they hear from us. And the other thing I would say, and this is really key, is we try and be as transparent as possible with data. So
Yep.
if CultureAI is in your organization, you should have a dashboard that shows you your own behaviors. And that's exactly the information that I would see as the administrator. So you know where you potentially made a mistake or where you did something and you go, yeah, that wasn't great. I was able to see, I fell for a couple of simulated phishing emails and I just went, both of them that I fell for was on a mobile device. It's not on my laptop. Okay, I need to pay more attention to my emails when I'm on a mobile device. Right?
Yep.
That's useful information to me because I want to change.
Yep.
And that, when we've seen it, when it's landed really well, and a lot of our clients are very, very happy with it. In fact, most of our clients are very, very happy with it. Um, I think it's because they have that same approach. This
Yep.
is a tool to help you understand where things can improve. This is not a stick to beat you with.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting because you're just taking me back to my uni days when I did psychology, and it's just really cool to see it sort of coming into the technology sphere
Yeah.
at the moment. Pretty much one of my last questions is what a lot of people might not know about you, John, and it's obviously your life before security. So, obviously, am I right in thinking you ran a nightclub? Is that
Yeah,
right in thinking?
that's right. Yeah. So there was a fantastic club called Planet Angel down in London, and for about 3 or 4 years, I was their on-site event manager. So obviously had a huge team of people working with me, loads of prep work done. But when the doors opened until they closed, I was the person that everybody wanted to talk to. It was so much fun. I made so many good friends from it.
Mm.
And it taught me a lot about security and culture as well, because um, there's there was one time I had a group of friends coming down from Birmingham, and we made a big effort to make it a fun club night. Right, we
Yep.
had Jenga, we had Xboxes, we had painting walls, um, and there was a friend of mine called Cam, and I was, I was like, oh, this is my thing. I'm very proud of it, and so I was basically bugging her. I was like, are you having fun? Are you having fun? Are you having fun? And she turned around, she looked at me, and she said, "You're not responsible for me having fun." And I said, "No, but I am responsible for making it more likely."
Okay.
Right? And then doing a lot of work in security and culture. What I actually meant was that in that circumstance, fun's what we call an emergent property. You
Okay.
set everything up the best you can, and it makes it more likely that someone's going to have fun. But you can't
Yep.
deal with the fact that maybe they broke up with their boyfriend, maybe the bouncers really hassed them one way, and maybe they lost their wallet, their phone. You can't fix everything, but you
Yep.
can make it more likely. And where that has an implication for security is we can't force security on people,
Mm.
not if we want them to be flexible and so on. Our job is to make security the easiest behavior, to make it the most likely, to make security that emergent property,
Yeah.
so that if you're trying to do your best, our tools will support you. And
Yeah.
that's not just the CultureAI tool, but I mean, just generally in place. Security shouldn't be getting in your way. It shouldn't be stopping you doing the things you want to do. It should be helping you do them safely. So
Yeah.
we can't force security, but we can encourage it. And I think that's how you start building a proper security culture in your organization, by being aware that you want people to have that flexibility, that ability to think for themselves, that ability to react, because that's their superpower. you can't put tools that stop them. You need to put tools that guide them to the right destination.
Perfect. And John, that's a fantastic point to finish on. So once again, John, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast. If anybody has any questions about John's story or about Culture AI as well, I'll be sure to put all the information down below. But John, once again, buddy, thank you very much for coming on.
It's my pleasure.